do you really want? The reason why this question makes us so uncomfortable is that when we start thinking, what do I really want? We think, what would I be doing right now if all the limitations to my liberty suddenly disappeared? And at first, it's exhilarating, and then it gets a bit scary, because we have the impression that our desires define our deep, true self. I come with some good news. Our desires are not our own. We don't have a deep, true self. And it is not the liberty to follow our desires that enables us to be true to ourselves, but on the contrary, truth that gives us the possibility to be free. In the early 19th century, the Romantic movement inherited a thought that was already developed in the Enlightenment and 17th century, that personal liberty, the possibility to follow one's desires, was the best way to ensure that society as a whole would get better. It was a moment when the idea of original sin was considered completely wrong, and therefore, if we're really good, if each one of us does what he or she really wants, we'll all be very happy. When Gustave Flaubert published Madame Bovary in 1857, France had gone through not one, not two, but 8 different regimes since the absolute monarchy. So for his generation, it was quite obvious that the possibility to just go ahead and do whatever revolution you wanted was not the best way to ensure stability and general happiness. Madame Bovary was considered a bit scandalous. So it's the story of a woman who gets married, then gets a bit bored, wants a fancy high life, gets many lovers, spirals down into debt and depression, and as you will see it in your booklets and the painting provided, the ending is not a very happy ending. But the interesting thing about Madame Bovary is not just the idea that it shows us how wrong it is to live a life by following one's own desires. It also shows a very interesting thing, which is the mechanics of desire, how desire actually begins. Because Emma Bovary didn't just wake up one day wanting a husband, a Parisian high life, or many lovers. She borrows these desires from the novels and the newspapers she reads. And that's great news for us, because we're all like Emma Bovary. We all want to be special, we all want to be particular individuals, because we're terrified of death. We don't want to be replaced. So we would usually think of desire in a linear way. A wants B. What we see in Madame Bovary, and as the French philosopher René Girard has developed, is that desire isn't so much a matter of A wants B, as a matter of A wants B as soon as high status C has indicated that B is desirable. So marketing specialists are experts in that. They would all know that the best way to make you want something is to show you that if you have it, it would make you special, but not so special that it would turn you into a weirdo. It would make you special because you'd be part of the elite. So most of the trends, the urban fashion movements that have happened over the last couple of decades are linked to this idea that if I dress in a certain way, I will get in touch with my deep true self, and then I will disclose it to the world. But there's a reason why all the romantic heroes look the same, all the punks look the same, all the skaters look the same, all the goths look the same. I'm not throwing any stones here. I was a goth myself as a teenager, and the reason why I dressed like I had just locked myself out of a ruined castle wasn't that I wanted to be original. I wanted to be part of a certain tribe. I wanted to signal to a certain group of people, we see the same things as being good. So I was well aware that a certain narrow group of people would see me as a direct quotation from an Anne Rice book or an Edgar Allan Poe short story or a Tim Burton movie. So these trends are not about being original, they're about survival. They're about finding the tribe that is ready to fight for you in case of need. And the best way to see that these social movements are linked to these notions of imitation and influence is when you look at the internet. It's the place where we talk about influence all the time because we talk about influencers, but at the same time, no one would say, well, I am an influencee. So influencers become famous when they provide a certain community with a way of speaking, a way of clothing themselves, a way of eating even, that makes them stick together, that helps them identify as being part of the same group. But here's the catch. Empowered is a passive adjective. You're only empowered insofar as the influential person who has power is willing to grant you power. So here's how it works. Suppose I'm looking at an image and everyone seems to think that this is a good image. I would start thinking, well, this is good, so it must be my deep true self. But how come my external self doesn't look like my deep true self? So I would go, I don't know, through a massive shopping spree or radical invasive medical treatments so that my external shape would match this ideal deep true self. But then what happens? Life happens. I'd make new encounters, meet new people, be subjected to new influence, and, well, here's another deep true self that I could become. So I become a new deep true self. We change all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. So nurturing the idea that we have a deep true self is in fact against the very dynamics of human life, which is about growth, expansion, encounters. And the frustrating thing is that if we define our life quest by the fact that we just follow each and every desire, we'll never get anywhere. Because our desires are exponential. They will tend towards the infinite. Yesterday, St. Augustine was mentioned, and I was reminded of that beautiful sentence that he says that what we really crave, what we really desire, is truth. We change all the time, but the truth does not. And it has become a very difficult thing to say in 2022 when everyone believes that truth is subjective. The fact is that truth is neither subjective nor personal. It is interpersonal. And it is objective. There are things that are objectively true. I think most of the mental health crisis that my students' generation is facing at the moment is linked to the fact that while everything tells them you have to speak your truth, you embrace your own subjectivity, they know they need constant approval from their peers on social media. They need the harsh reactions, the likes, the retweets, whatever. So the awful thing about that is that the most empowering sentence nowadays is, you do you. The trouble when you say you do you is that you put you in a plastic box and you tell you, you'd better never ever change because otherwise you'd be unfaithful to your deep true self. And when we say you do you, or when you hear it, what we really want to say or hear is, I love you, no matter what silly, stupid thing you're about to do. I will not kick you out of my house. I will not shame you or block you on social media. I will not exclude you from my reality, because no matter how deeply we disagree, I want us to partake in the same world. Because that's what we really want. We want togetherness. I'm going to do a quick auction here. Some of you might know the answer, but Isaiah Berlin recorded a certain amount of possible definitions of liberty. How much would you say? Shall we start at 10? More? Who'd say more? You'd have to help me here. Yeah, more? 50? More? 100? More? I have 100 here. Who says more?
More, 400.
A bit less. So Isaiah Berlin recorded 200 different definitions of liberty. We cannot just talk about liberty in the abstract. It has to be rooted on a shared understanding of truth and what we live together in. So liberty in the West is not a value. If we define it as a value, we allow it to fluctuate on the stock market of ideas, and we've seen over the last couple of years that liberty against safety, well, it can be a pretty tough fight. Liberty is a principle in the West. That's why yesterday we had such a hard time trying to explain why we would be interested in someone else's freedom. That's because we just consider that this is normal. And that's what a culture is about. A culture is not a matter of origins, heritage, social background. A culture is having the same set of norms. Whether you define a subculture or a national culture, it's about agreeing that we see the same things as normal. So why will the truth set us free? If we agree that our desires are borrowed, it's much easier to say, well, I only want that because I've seen someone else wanting it, and therefore we're not as obsessed with obtaining it. And the truth about our desires also makes us free because it enables us to being grateful. I can say thank you to the wonderful person who mentioned this or that idea that I can now develop and share with you. So there's another, probably deeper reason why the truth shall make us free. In times when liberty is limited, constrained, even suppressed, it's important that we keep the inner freedom to stand for what we know is true, to say, this is wrong, this is not the reality I want to be part of. And once we achieve that, once we agree to talk about that openly, we can reach together a much deeper and brighter level of liberty. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Desire is some kind of hope, and without hope you have despair. So maybe it's better to live with this hopeless desire for all your life than to be the victim of despair.
The problem if you limit desire to the idea of wanting to own something is that, like you said, we might end up in despair there too, because desiring something that is unattainable can be a drive, it can be stimulating, it can also be crushing. So if we define desire as hope, we have to also question, well, what is a positive, what is a good desire? So most of the spiritual traditions would say that material desires are not the ones that should be nurtured because we have this exponential desire curve. But Pascal said, well, he was arguing against the libertines of his time, intellectual libertines who just thought that I might believe and want whatever I want. He argued that when we realized that all our desires are ways to forget about how miserable we are because we don't have the supreme good, well, we just get bored. It's metaphysical ennui. We just sit down and contemplate the emptiness of our life. So Pascal upholds this idea that while some desires for material things or power or whatever lead to despair, the desire for the common good and the greater good are, on contrary, positive drives that help for a sense of better individual and collective achievement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.